Chapter 139 Shizun, Sweet Dreams. Moran froze. He could smell the familiar fragrance of Haitang, and though Chuaning wore a straight face, the sleeve on his eyelid was gentle and careful as it wiped. But more importantly, this white-robed person was standing so close that Moran could see the fine lines of the texture of his lips, so close that all he had to do was dip his head down to kiss those lips, to take those tender petals between his own. "You may have won, but you didn't wake me up, so it wasn't a fair match," Chuaning said as he finished wiping. Moran blinked, then smiled. "But I didn't win. Shizun won." "You didn't harvest anything more all afternoon?" "Nope, and there's not much left either. I went to the market, bought some things for the winter, and made a round through the village. That took up some time," Moran said. "So Shizun reaped more than I did." Chuaning let out a cool humph, but seemed satisfied. After a moment, he asked, "What did you buy at the market? Mattresses?" Before Moran could reply, Linge, not wishing to be left out, cut in with a smile. "Tianjin brought so much stuff back. I felt bad for the poor horse that had to drag it all back." "It wasn't that much, just coal and such, some meat and some sweets." "Not only that," Linge said. "Tianjin also went and bought a mattress for every family in the village. It was so many that the grandma who fluffs the cotton just up and came back to the village with him with a whole cart full." Chuaning was a bit astonished. "Where did you get the money?" "I have some savings," Moran said with a smile. "And the mattresses were pretty reasonable too, much cheaper than the ones they sell in the upper cultivation realm." "What's the meat for?" "Impulse purchase. I gave it to the village chief to roast and share with everyone tomorrow." Chuaning's face remained carefully neutral as he asked, "And the sweets?" Linge clapped her hands with a giggle. "For the kids in the village, of course. Mo Tianjin gave out the sweets first thing when he got back. There was a malt sugar candy and osmanthus cake. The kids were over the moon. Not many of them had treats like that before." She paused, then said happily, "I got one too." The girl was sociable and acted familiar with everyone. Chuaning hadn't minded the other times she interjected, but this time he shot her a cold glare. "Was it good?" Linge answered freely, "Super good, very sweet." A sardonic smile tugged at Chuaning's lips. "Then help yourself to more," he said indifferently before walking away with a sweep of his sleeves. Moran didn't know what he'd done to upset him this time. He was about to give chase when something black blotted out his entire field of vision. Chuaning had tossed the rope he'd draped across his shoulders at Moran's face. Moran pulled it off and looked anxiously back at him. "Shizun? What are you doing naked like that? I'm freezing just looking at you." Chuaning snapped. "Put on your clothes." Moran was rendered speechless. He truly was quite warm, but he quickly and silently pulled the rope on anyway, since Chuaning had said so. The fabric was instantly soaked with sweat and stuck uncomfortably to his skin. At a loss, he gazed at his Shizun through downcast lashes. Chuaning lowered his sharp brows. "Fix your collar. Don't just leave it open for the world to see. Indecent." Mutely, Moran pulled his lapels closed, folding them tight and high so that not a sliver of skin was left exposed. Yet all that did was impart him with a kind of untouchable allure instead. For some reason, the sight of it made Chuaning even angrier. He cursed under his breath and walked away with a flick of his sleeves, leaving Moran to stare blankly after him like a dumb dog. The village chief, his wife, and Linge were all flummoxed as they watched this exchange. Linge said, somewhat disconcerted, "This Tianjin sure is scary. I've never seen such a strange-tempered person before." She spoke quietly in sympathetic fawning tones, turning her head as she muttered, "Your master is so mean to you. You're really patient, putting up with all the—" The words died on her lips as her eyes met Moran's. That usually smiling and easygoing Mo Xianzhen wore a dark expression, and there was a terrifying, wolf-like ferociousness in his eyes. Her mouth snapped shut, and Moran turned his face away, somewhat obscuring his features. Linge could feel her heart race. She was unsure if it was merely her imagination, or if this person, who was usually so calm and serene, like a sturdy mountain, really had revealed a starkly different face of savagery for an instant. "Sorry," Moran mumbled. "You guys go ahead first. I'm going to go check on him." He set off with broad strides. Moran found Chuaning by the bank of the river, where reeds danced along the shore and the setting sun sank into rippling waters. Moran came to a stop behind him, a little short of breath from how fast he had run. "Shizun." No reply. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." "Then why are you so displeased?" "I'm plenty pleased." Moran blinked. "Huh?" Turning to look over his shoulder, Chuaning said grouchily, "I'll be as displeased as I please." Moran didn't want to play word games with Chuaning. He studied his expression instead, then smiled as realization dawned. "I know why Shizun is upset." Chuaning's hands balled into fists within his billowing sleeves, and though he maintained a calm expression, his shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. "I already said I'm not." But Moran had walked over to stand under the tree with him, grinning with a hand behind his back. The old banyan tree at the river bank had thick roots protruding above ground, like hardy veins that burrowed deep into the earth. Standing on one of those roots, Moran looked even taller than he already was. Alarmed and a touch annoyed, Chuaning said, "Get down here." "Alrighty." Moran hopped lightly down and landed in front of Chuaning. The tree was so massive and sprawling that there was very little space not occupied by its roots. Chuaning stood in one such spot, and Moran had little other ground to stand on besides the patch right next to him. As he waited with his head lowered, Moran's breaths were practically caressing Chuaning's lashes. Chuaning was so uncomfortable, he ended up demanding with a gloomy expression, "Go stand up there again." Moran couldn't help but grin. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Is Shizun toying with me? Chuaning knew he was being unreasonable in his irritation. Thus exposed, he simply refused to reply, remaining grimly silent. Moran revealed the hand he'd hidden behind his back. It held a surprise cargo of candy, a colorful little pile of rice paper wrapped sweetness cupped in his palm. "Don't be mad, I saved some for you." Chuaning only grew more silently furious. He was so mad he could spit blood, flames of rage burning high into the heavens. Sword-like brows drawn low in anger, he eventually bellowed, "Who were you?" Moran hurriedly snapped to attention. "Present." "Who wants your stupid candy? What am I, a 3-year-old? Some village maiden? I don't want—" A piece of candy had been stuffed into his mouth. Chuaning froze in shock. His face flushed bright red all the way to the tips of his ears. Whether in anger or embarrassment was anyone's guess. And his phoenix eyes were as wide as they could go as he glared at the grinning man before him with a mixture of shock and fury. "It's milk-flavored," Moran said. "Your favorite." Chuaning found himself a little speechless and a little powerless. Like a cat with its claws clipped, hissing and bristling, yet completely harmless. He savored the milk candy. A small strand of hair by his temple loosened when he'd stomped off earlier, fluttered softly like a tender leaf in the breeze. Staring at it, Moran had the irresistible urge to reach out and tuck it back in. Moran was a man of action. He thought, so he did. Chuaning's speechlessness intensified. "I got some candies and pastries for everyone in the village," Moran said with a smile. but I tucked the best candies in my sleeve for Shizun, and I left the best pastries in your room. I got you Lotus crisps, really pretty ones. Eat them in secret when you get back. Don't let the little ones see, and I want some too. Chiwaning said nothing, standing in the field of reeds beneath that banyan tree. A long moment passed before he rolled the melting milk candy on his tongue and gazed up at the person standing before him. Finally, he tossed out the words, "Honey-glazed lotus root." Moran grinned. "Yep." "Stewed crab meatballs?" Yep." Chiwaning silently turned his head away. He felt like he had discarded a little too much of his dignity today, and he should pick it back up and dust it off. So he pointedly straightened his spine and lifted his chin slightly as he said, "Too bad there isn't any pear blossom white wine." He must have thought he looked very stern and imposing that way, and it might have had such an effect in the past, when Moran had been younger and shorter than him. Little did he know that this posture now served only to give Moran a better view of his gently sloping jawline, his exposed throat, and his porcelain-fair neck. He was like an arrogant cat flaunting its softest spot in front of a wolf's fangs, conceited and oblivious, thinking it was intimidating the wolf, when in truth the wolf wanted nothing more than to take the cat's throat between his jaws, to lick and to kiss, to eat him whole. What a dummy. It took an enormous amount of willpower for Moran to tear his gaze from the underside of Chiwaning's jaw, but his eyes were a little darker, and his voice a bit deeper as he looked at the person in front of him. He forced himself to smile and conducted himself the way a man of integrity would, and said, "I got that too." Chiwaning didn't quite follow at first, and asked with furrowed brow, "What?" "Pear blossom white." Keeping his expression carefully steady, Moran exhaled quietly as he squashed that burning desire inside of himself. His voice came out a little rough. "I got pear blossom white too." Chiwaning stared in silence. "It occurred to me on the way back that Shizun might want it." Moran explained. "Good thing I picked some up." Chiwaning glared at this disciple who had pulled out all the stops to please him and found himself at a loss for words. Perhaps he suddenly thought there was really no point to being so difficult, no point to this veneer of coldness. He finally relaxed by degrees, leaning against the old banyan tree as he studied the young man before him. "Moran." "You've changed." For a split second, he thought he caught a hint of unease in the depths of Moran's eyes. But then Moran's thick eyelashes fluttered, and he asked, "Does Shizun like it?" Chiwaning eyed him for a long moment. "I don't dislike it." Then, as if remembering something, he straightened up and raised a hand that hesitated mid-air for a beat before coming to rest on Moran's side. Moran flinched, looking down at Chiwaning in apprehensive confusion. "I read about your battle with the drought demon of Yellow River," Chiwaning said. "Is this where you were injured?" A long pause. Then, Chiwaning sighed softly and clapped Moran on the shoulder. "You've done well. The title of Mozongsche is well deserved." This disciple wouldn't presume. A small smile tugged at Chiwaning's lips, and he poked Moran between the brows with that same hand. "Then again, running around half naked all day is indeed no way for a Zongsche to behave. It's getting late. Let's head back and turn in for the night. What's the plan for tomorrow?" Moran thought for a second before saying, "I think there was something about cooking the rice to make rice cakes." Chiwaning nodded. He suddenly said, "Don't just randomly take off your clothes anymore." Moran's face went red. "Got it. Take a break if you're hot from working." "Okay." Chiwaning mulled it over for a bit, then added, Remember to bring your own handkerchief, and don't dally around with unmarried girls. Do you have a handkerchief?
Feeling a little self-conscious, Moran replied,
Nope. Then what do you use to wipe your face?
Feeling even more abashed over his own crudeness, Moran hesitated before eventually saying,
My sleeves?
Chewaning stared at him for a moment.
I'll make you one sometime.
Moran's eyes brightened.
For me?
Moran was ecstatic.
I can't wait. When is Shizun going to make it?
Chewaning's brows drew together slightly.
After we're done here, at the very least.
Then I want one with haitang flowers too. Is that okay? Chewaning eyed him, then said,
I'll see what I can do.
Overcome with joy over the promised handkerchief he'd earned in exchange for a handful of candy, Moran floated on cloud 9 all night, rolling around in his new bought quilt, too happy to sleep. He had spent these last 5 years in a fog of agonizing misery. This was the first time he couldn't sleep because of joy instead. His heart kept racing and wouldn't calm down. In the end, he gave in and sat up. His window was right across from Chewaning's. He opened it a crack and leaned on the sill, taking in the refreshing scent of the night in the countryside as he gazed into that small courtyard and at the candlelight across the way. Chewaning was still up. What was he doing? Was he considering designs for the handkerchief, or was he eating the lotus crisp? Moran watched that warm yellow light in the room across from his for a long, long time, all the way until the light was snuffed out and Chewaning went to bed, before wistfully murmuring, Shizun, sweet dreams. And something else kept tucked away deep inside, something he dared not speak aloud, even if no one would hear. Wanning, sweet dreams.